Welcome to The Hidden World of Women, a podcast brought to you by Women's Health and Wellbeing Services. My name is Emma and I'll be your host for today's episode. Here in Australia, we celebrate ANZAC Day on the 25th of April. And so for the month of April and probably into May, I wanted to take some time to actually look at the roles of women in the Defence Force here in Australia. So today I'm joined by an absolutely amazing woman, Helen Burgess. Now, Helen was a peacetime veteran. She's been married for 35 years. She's got 2 adult sons and is a nana to 1. And maybe by the time this comes out, she'll be a nana to 2. She's a member of the North Beach sub-branch of the RSLWA. She's a keen knitter, a reader, a programmer, and she also has a fur baby. Her English Springer Spaniel, Bellatrix, who's 18 months old. Thank you so much for joining me today, Helen.
Thank you for asking me along.
So I'm really excited to speak with you. So you were a member of the Royal Australian Air Force.
Yes, I was.
And you're a peacetime veteran.
Yes.
So before we start, can you tell me, what does that mean?
Okay, so we know from the news and everything we've got current day veterans, and we know that they've come back from Afghanistan and Iraq and seen stuff overseas.
Mm-hmm.
But a peacetime veteran happens after the end of Vietnam War to the beginning of Timor, or to about 2000, around there. And basically it's because we didn't see any action. There was a few deployments that were peacetime, peacekeeping type stuff, but we didn't actually have to go and deploy and defend or be a part of a fighting force, so to speak.
Yeah. So how old were you when you joined the Air Force?
I was 20 when I joined, and it was actually my second attempt. Just before I turned 18, I got my father to sign the paper so I could join the first time. Yeah. And they went, go away and get more bit life experience.
Oh, wow.
And then 2 years later, I went back and said, had life experience.
2 whole years of life experience.
I want to join. And I originally had ideas of joining as an officer, but I ended up being an other rank role, and I enjoyed that role. And it was something that I really liked. One of the reasons to be an officer was that I really liked to fly too.
Yeah.
So that was one of my hobbies way back when.
So, which was probably going to answer one of my questions, which was why the Air Force?
I love planes. I wanted to be a female pilot in the Air Force, and unfortunately, I was before my time.
Yeah. When
I joined, there wasn't any, and then about 3 years later, they took officers within the Air Force to start, and then they started going outside to the general public.
Yeah. As
one air rank told me when I was at a function from the Aero Club when I was there, we're cutting out 50% of the population by saying we can't have female pilots.
Yeah.
So they were changing. They were starting to change what they were doing. And I was in that time where things were being more opened up to women and what we could do and where we could go.
So had you always wanted to be in the Air Force?
Yep.
So you grew up just knowing that that's what you wanted to do?
That's what I wanted to be. I knew I wanted to fly from a very young age. My dad had these trees in the backyard, lemon trees. One was my helicopter and one was my fixed wing plane, and I used to play Skippy the kangaroo where I was the person. It wasn't the guy that was going out, it was me. And this is from the ages of about 5 or 6.
Oh, wow.
And for my 5th birthday, my dad made me a rocket.
Oh, how exciting.
Yep. So I think I've always been sort of going that way.
Yeah.
And when I grew up, STEM wasn't a thing.
No.
But that's what I was interested in.
Yeah.
I'm interested in science. I'm interested in the science of flight. I'm interested in chemistry, what works, what doesn't work. And,
So this is not where this podcast is supposed to be heading, and I've derailed it. This is, I think, a record for me to be derailing it at 4 minutes. Normally I wait a bit longer than this. But so speaking about when you were growing up, STEM wasn't a thing.
Yep.
Was that an issue for you?
No. Because my dad and mum allowed me to just explore.
Yeah.
So I was a bit of a tomboy. My dad had a shed up the back where he did all these handyman things. And I used to make, other people make mud pies. I make sawdust ones.
Yeah.
I used to help Dad out in the workshop. I didn't learn to weld, but I learned to hold on to things when he was welding.
Yeah. And when to let go.
But yeah, it was never frowned upon that I wanted chemistry.
Yeah.
So when I was in or wanted to look at physics or was interested in a particular science thing, it wasn't really a problem because my parents were like, well, you can do what you want.
Yeah.
It's not that women can do whatever they want to do. It's more about what do you want to do, you as a person.
That's it, regardless of what your gender is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I had an opportunity to become a industrial chemist when I finished high school, and I decided, no, I want to join the Air Force.
Ah.
So I could have got...
Two very different...
Yep.
Yeah. So what made you pick the Air Force over industrial chemistry?
Flying.
Flying. But then you weren't going to get to fly?
No, but I'd be on a base with flights.
Ah, and there'd be planes there.
There'd be planes. Half my career wasn't spent on bases with planes. But
you don't know that when you're 17 though, do you, and leaving high school?
No. But I just liked aircraft.
Yeah.
And I was drawn to it. My eldest sister, Gwen, she had joined the Air Force previously.
Ah.
And she left to get married. But she joined the WAAFs, the Women's Royal Australian Air Force, while it was still the Women's Royal Australian Air Force. And she was in when it changed. But she got out because she was marrying an officer. They were going to get posted to different places.
Yeah.
She wanted a family, that sort of thing.
It's very difficult to create a family when you're in very different places.
Yeah, especially when she was going to be in Darwin.
Yeah.
And I think he was going to be staying in Sydney or something.
Yeah,
so,
really tricky to have a family in that situation.
Yeah, back then too, because it was just the early days of women being incorporated in the regular Air Force. And
your family, so obviously your sister was in the Air Force.
Yep.
Your parents?
No, but my granddad was a World War I English veteran. So he was in the army, he went to Palestine, missed out on Gallipoli by that much because he graduated as Australia was pulling out, and then England pulled out after. So when he got to Egypt, he didn't need to go. And then when Palestine finished, about a year later, he went to the Western Front. And when he was in the Western Front, he got what they called trench fever, which is actually like a bug.
Yeah.
And he got it so bad, he was so ill, they had to send him back to England.
Oh.
So,
which, either a blessing or for him at the time, no doubt devastating.
Yeah. And I don't know which, but it did definitely cut his life short. He died in the 50s, late 50s. So where I know the rest of his brothers and sisters lived on well until their 80s. Yeah. So, it did do that. But that's only because I'd had did some research for my dad because he wanted to know.
So you didn't? Oh, yeah, you wouldn't have grown up hearing stories from him.
I didn't hear stories from him. I didn't hear stories from Dad about his dad. But I just had this thing about the Air Force. I suppose my favourite movie of all time is The Battle of Britain. So maybe it was the romance of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. There was just something about it.
Yeah.
And I loved F-111s and I love Spitfires. I'm not too keen on some of the more modern aircraft, but there's just something about them. Yeah. Maybe it is the romance of it all. Yeah. It can't be like one person I met who said, I chose the Air Force because it had a better uniform.
Do you know what? The Air Force is white, right? No.
Blue.
Blue, yes. No, okay, I'm fine with blue. Trying to keep anything white clean, I'm out.
And the Army had a horrid green. The women had a horrid green at the time. I much better like the new uniforms they've got.
Yeah. For the new army or for the new
Army, Air Force,
all of them?
All of them, yeah. They've gone. For the women, it's much more. That's sort of, you can tell that it's just the same.
Yeah.
Just a different colour.
Just a different colour. So when you joined, was it a culture shock for you?
Not really. It could have been, I suppose, but I felt like I had done it all before. So when I went to recruit, so I went from Perth to Adelaide to Edinburgh, and that's where I did my recruit training. And you have to wait in a pool, they call them poolies, and you do odd jobs wherever they can put you, until you get your whole group together, the whole 24 of you. So I had to wait a week or so, and then we started the course, and you just had to do things, and I was used to just having to do things because my dad was fairly regimented, I suppose, in some ways. You know, I had to keep my room clean. Well, it's the same thing in the Air Force.
Yeah.
Marching and exercising, well, that was a bit different, but it wasn't anything I wasn't prepared to do.
Were there many women who were there?
Well, when I went through, there were 2 flights of 24. There was one ours and one behind us. And I think there was a couple of extra flights of guys as well. But we had an airfield defence guard, an ADGI, called Dave Basham, and he had just been promoted to sergeant. He wasn't supposed to have a course, but he was wonderful. There was, if you were on parade and you needed to adjust your dress, he goes, ACW, I need to adjust your dress. Yes, Sergeant. You adjust your dress. Good. Don't let it happen again. Yes, Sergeant. But, after 8 weeks with him and having gone through some of, like, one young lady, she just couldn't take directions, didn't have the wherefore. We call it the CDF, and she was discharged as being not suitable. Yeah. Don't know how she got recruited, but never mind. And there was a couple of other things that happened on base, and he was really compassionate and got us through, like when I went through, we had to do NBC training, which is nuclear, biological, chemical warfare training, in those horrid suits. And one of the things they do is with the gas mask is they put you into a tent full of CS gas, or almost like pepper spray. Yeah. And this particular gas reacts with moisture. Female bodies. Yeah. Moisture. So the day before, Sergeant Basham came up and said, "Girls, you need to do surfboard drill." What's surfboard drill, Sergeant? Well, you know how your anatomy is different to our anatomy. Yes, Sergeant. Well, you've got to use those things that you use once a month when you go and do the gas training. Okay, Sergeant. So that's the sort of guy he was. Yeah. He actually helped us because the other flight of women, their corporal was an asshole.
Makes a difference.
Makes a difference.
Yeah. So your whole flight was all women?
Yep.
Oh, wow. Do you think that made a difference?
I think so. I think we sort of did fraternise with the guys and the boozer and all that kind of stuff, but I think it did make a difference that we were all there for each other. Yeah.
And it's not just one or two women out of 24 in a boys' club.
Yeah, yeah. And we were there all for each other.
Yeah.
One girl ended up getting medically discharged after 3 weeks because she had a back injury and she didn't know, and doing the course,
basic training
course going over obstacles and things. Obstacle course, that's it. She put it back out. And after
How devastating.
Devastating. She was a really lovely girl. Yeah. Really lovely girl. And we all sort of, like most of us were going on to the same training base for our trades. Others were going to other places. So it meant we still had a little sort of friendship group when we got to the new place. So, yeah.
How physically demanding was that training?
Pretty much. Like you're marched everywhere. Yeah. And 10,000 steps could be done in half a day because you marched everywhere. I mentioned about the NBC training. We had to jog around the block, and these blocks are like city block size. Yeah. Okay. And so we had to jog around, and it was about keeping together. Yeah. So whilst everybody was waiting for the last people to come up, they had to do push-ups.
Oh, God.
until the last people came up. Yeah. So they got the message that
you're going to need to be faster.
Or not only faster, you've got to keep
stay together. Yeah.
You know, you stay together.
Yeah.
Firing a weapon was a bit different. It wasn't something I was expecting. But at the same time, it didn't bother me because Dad used to do competition shooting, so it just didn't bother me because he used to talk about shooting. Yeah. So it wasn't a big thing. But, you know, you had to be fit. And I went in with a certain level of fitness and I just upped it again.
Elevated, yeah.
And that's something that's different today. Today, when recruits go in, if they're not fit enough, if they're not like they can't run or whatever, they're given a training.
Oh, wow. I didn't realise that.
They sort of say, well, you need to do this training to get to this fitness level. So, yeah.
Ah, I assumed, well, you're not fit enough, you don't get in.
Yeah, it depends how badly they're...
How close are you?
How close are you? Yeah. And how much you really are wanting it. But, yeah, I was always an active, physical, fit youth girl. So, you know, I played hockey. I liked to play squash. I walked everywhere. You know, it wasn't... Marching to me was just, it's a bit of a quicker walk. Yeah. Yeah.
And so you finish your training.
Yep.
And then you go out and...
You go next to your trade school.
Oh, okay.
So my trade was communications. And...
Do you get to choose that or does that get assigned to you?
I chose it.
Okay.
So when I went to recruits, to the recruiting office, I actually chose what I wanted to do. Yeah. So then I went to Laverton to do the training, and I spent a good 6 months or so there. Got sent home at Christmas, then came back again for Christmas leave. They'd send you, you know. Yeah. I think there was an airline strike at something at the time, so I didn't leave until a lot later than others because getting to WA is like...
Yeah.
But all in all, it was... you sort of worked out who you were and what you actually wanted out of friendships, because there's a lot of fair weather friends. Yeah. So when everything is going great,
they're right there with you.
They're right with you. But if you go through a little bit of a tough time,
you're on your own, love.
You're on your own. Yeah. And I suppose that's something I learnt in the Air Force, is that there are these things called fair weather friends. Because I wanted to be friends with everyone. Yeah. I wanted to trust everyone, but I couldn't necessarily do that.
Did you find... So when you went on to do the trade school training, was that mixed cohort?
Yes, sort of.
What does that mean?
Well, the majority of us were girls.
Yep.
And then as the guys flunked out of the signal... They came to us, and then right down near the end of our training, like the last few weeks of our training, which is all sort of very hush-hush sort of stuff, another guy transferred over from the Navy. And he'd never done that work, so then he came in. Yeah. But most of my courses after that point were mixed. Yeah. So,
and I suppose we hear the stereotypes that, and whether or not they still exist today, but that women have to prove themselves more than their male counterparts in the forces. Did you experience that?
Yep.
So in what ways?
In what ways? Getting through the work quicker, just being more attentive to details, particularly when you get out. Having guys, I remember when I got on my first shift in Sydney at the telecommunications unit in Sydney, and it was a night shift. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm one of 2 girls on the shift. The other girl's gone off and going to do a job, and I'm there just sort of watching the monitors, so to speak. And the guys start up with those jokes. You know, like, have you got half a bar of chocolate? Or do you like chocolate? Yeah, well, I've got half a bar. Do you want one?
Yeah.
You know, all that kind of innuendo, sexual, just to try and see how I'd react. So I told them, I can't remember the joke, but I knew I had a joke that was really bad. And I told it, and they looked at me and they went, you win.
Yeah.
You know, so there was that. There was the some of the corporals I worked under or worked with said, well, I don't expect you to dig a trench. And I said, well, why not? I can handle a spade. Can't you handle a spade? He says, well, I'm not giving birth. And I said, well, I wouldn't expect you to. You don't have the parts.
Also, that's not on the job description.
Exactly. Exactly.
At no point do I expect to be asked to give birth for part of my role in the Air Force.
Exactly. But he was talking about that women thing.
Yeah.
Or, I bet you can't lift up this table, but it's a table he wouldn't be able to lift either.
Yeah.
So you're like, excuse me?
Yeah.
Trying to really be this stretch of what it is. And I suppose there are some old crusties out there still.
Yeah.
Hopefully there's not. Hopefully nothing's been learnt or passed down, or which tends to happen. How you
went up through it. So yeah.
So hopefully that's changed, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's so hard to change that culture. Is the boys' club culture is because it's always been a boys' club culture.
Yeah. And so did you find that, you know, with the jokes, that once you'd kind of one-upped them and put them in their place, then you were one of the boys?
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's literally how you had to be. Because if you were a precious princess...
You were going to be treated like a precious princess.
You were treated like a precious princess. And that wasn't the role. The role was to work together.
Yeah.
You know, you have esprit de corps and camaraderie. The esprit de corps is the working together.
Yeah.
It's, I have your back.
Yeah.
How can you have your back if you don't trust me not to be a precious princess?
And I guess that's kind of where it comes from. With a couple of conversations that I've had with men who have been in the Defence Forces, they've struggled, and I think it's because of what they've heard from senior officers, but they've struggled with women in it because, well, I need to know that if I'm in a difficult situation, that she's going to have my back, and how can I trust it? How can I trust a woman?
Yeah.
So you can't be a precious princess, I
no,
guess, because
you can't. And you can't treat
at
it
times
like
people's lives are depending on it.
And that's the whole thing. You go out, if you're out in the field, you've got to depend on them. And I think that's why for a long time we weren't allowed to go out on any of the deployments or go to those jobs that required us to have the guys' backs. I think it's one of the reasons why the Army took such a long time to let the women do more roles.
Yeah.
Because there was things like, well, if you're a woman and you kill someone, how is that going to affect you? Well, how does it affect the guys?
Same way that it affects a bloke, I'm going to guess. Yeah.
A lot of the stuff that we do in the Air Force, or when I did it, when I started, there was no such thing as sexual harassment because the Act wasn't in. Yeah. There was no such thing as OH&S. There was a lot of the stuff that they have today, that they have frameworks around to do that with, I didn't have. Yeah. So you either sucked it up or you got out. And by sucking it up meant that it wasn't meaning that you condoned it or you didn't like it. Because there have been times when, for instance, in Darwin, I've been promoted to a sergeant. I was in a unit, and there was a mainly male tech office that I had to walk through, or tech workshop. And I turned around to all the guys and I said, there is only one word I don't want to hear out of your mouth. If I hear it, I'll put you up on charge. And they said, what word is that? And I said, it starts with C and ends with T.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear it. So because you never know when I'm coming through, don't use it. Don't use it.
Yeah.
And they were like, not a problem, Sarge.
Yeah.
You know, because I told them where my line was.
Yeah.
You know, I heard lots of Fs and lots of bloodies and lots of,
yeah,
that bastard. Why won't it go in? You know, I heard a lot of that, but they knew I didn't like that word.
Yeah.
And they knew they could come into my hole in the wall, because that's what my office was, and sit down and have a talk if they needed to. So it wasn't like, I always said that I wouldn't do what I wouldn't ask somebody else to do.
Mm-hmm.
So if I asked them not to use that word, I never used it.
You won't use it either, yeah.
If somebody asked me to dig a trench, I expect them to be part of the trench as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's what being one of the boys is about. It's about doing what's expected together as a team. And once you got over that, the only thing is when you're on, that's every time you go to a new unit or you go to a new base, you had to start
all that again,
unless you already knew someone there.
Yeah.
So it gets a little tiresome sometimes, but no.
Yeah. So did you have any bad experiences with things like sexual harassment?
Not with sexual harassment, but with bullying.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was accused of several things, and at the time the Defence Act had that you were guilty until proven innocent.
Oh.
Right? So that meant I was suspended from my job.
Oh.
I had no rights. I was put under pseudo house arrest. In other words, they didn't give me a piece of paper to say I was under arrest.
You just couldn't go anywhere.
I just couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
I couldn't socialise with my peer group in the Air Force. I couldn't. I got taken to and from work by in a carpool. Oh, it's because, you've got to save money. Excuse me, when everybody else is more ranked than I am in the carpool, you've got to wander.
Yeah.
And this went on for about 9 months.
Oh, that's a long time.
Yeah. And I eventually went to the minister at the time, who's now our governor, Mr. Beasley, Governor Beasley. And I'd written everything out in an envelope, sent to my father to give to him.
Yeah.
And he read it and he went, and very shortly after that, I was given the official interview. Yeah. Which cleared me.
So 9 months of just sitting in limbo.
Yep. And the security police coming up and going, okay, we want to talk to you now. We want you to talk about this, or we want you to talk about that. I don't know anything about this or that.
Yeah.
So just in limbo, not knowing where you're going, not knowing who your friends are. As I said, fair weather friends.
Yeah.
And that did leave me with some significant trauma.
I was going to say, how did that impact you? So whereabouts so you were in the Air Force for 16 years. Whereabouts?
That was I joined in at 84 and that was 1989.
So you stayed for another 10 years after that?
Yeah, 13, yeah.
So how did that impact you staying?
I was pretty stubborn.
I feel like you might need to be in order to be able to, to be in the Air Force, to be fair.
That first year, I had a really terrible first 2 years. That year, 89 and 90, were not very good. So our annual reports, they just ignored them. I was a corporal for 10 years. Every time I went to a new base or a new unit, the whispers had already gone before me. So I didn't necessarily get to do the jobs I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Which...
Despite the fact that your name was cleared.
Yep. The fact that I had to have a security interview every couple of years until they finally, in Darwin, they went, we don't need to do it anymore, we'll just do it on the regular 5-year basis.
Yeah.
No, because there was nothing that they could do.
Yeah.
It proved nothing. But it's because I married someone who likes motorcycles and doesn't, you know, we're different.
Yeah.
People using information for their own purposes and twisting it.
Mm.
You know, it took me a long time to acknowledge that that's
There's a lot of trauma there.
not good.
Yeah.
And I do have PTSD from it. People go, oh, but that wouldn't be, oh, excuse me?
Yeah, I think people have this idea that PTSD comes from a really big thing that happens,
It's not.
and actually it's the dripping tap. It's the little things that are constant that, continue for years.
Yep. And, to have that for 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is 10 years to have that drip.
Yeah.
And to go into a base and people disliking you automatically because they've heard the rumours.
Yeah.
And people trying to say that you're one thing and you're not. It makes it very hard to work that teamwork.
Yeah.
That essential teamwork. It didn't matter to me, it mattered to them.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, and the thing is, it was the women who were the worst.
Yeah.
My own sex was like, I thought, well, what would happen if it happened to you, if you were told though?
Yeah.
The outcome, I like to think my case sort of changed things a little. The outcome of it was that now you're innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah.
And
hopefully something happens quicker than 9 months.
Yeah. And and that's the thing. It's
because you had the courage and the ability to be able to go to the minister at the time.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people that wouldn't be able to do that.
No. And the thing is that there's a lot of things said about, well, if you go to the minister, you can kiss your career goodbye.
Yeah.
If you go and do to the ombudsman,
yeah,
you can kiss your career goodbye. And I suppose in some ways maybe that did happen. But that 10 years as a corporal taught me a lot of stuff. Because it made me realise that for me to get that next rank and to have the people who you need to give you the reporting score to get the next rank not treat you as though you're
damaged goods
or the letter A, or the red letter, that sort of thing. That it takes time, and
that must be difficult as well when you are moving bases.
Yeah,
because I was sort of thinking, would it have made it easier that you were moving bases because you'd had that experience for 9 months, but then when you moved, you get a chance to start afresh. But you didn't, because the whispers went before you. So,
because that's one thing I'll say about my mustering, we were really good at passing on the rumours. we had the channels to do that. Yeah, being in communications. So yeah, it was but I did have. But in saying that, I also met a lot of people who believed in me, and it just made it hard for me to work with groups of people. Yeah. Because you'd get people who'd go, oh, I don't want to work with her. Yeah. Why not?
No reason.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I suppose this is the first time I've said it publicly that I've told my family and my friends what I've gone through. Yeah. But I've never told...
outside of that circle.
So this is a world first, guys. And I can laugh about it. It doesn't...
How long did it take before you could laugh about it?
About 2016.
Yeah.
So post RAAF, I joined... I went to teach at TAFE. Mm-hmm. And some of the stuff that was happening, the social isolation, that sort of stuff, near the end of my time at TAFE, that sort of was there. So I ended up, and I was suffering from PTSD.
I was going to say, I imagine I've heard that a lot about the TAFE culture, and I'm sure that there are some TAFEs that are awesome, but that must have been quite triggering.
Yeah, and the last 2 years, I think it triggered the most, or 2 or 3 years. It got triggered, and I didn't know why I was so angry. That people couldn't follow rules. I was getting really frustrated.
How hard is it?
Yeah. So, they informed me about the voluntary redundancies really nicely. They said you're targeted, which is another thing that's sort of a trigger. But I ended up taking it.
Yeah.
And it also meant that the Christmas before I left, I'd rung up Open Arms, or VVCS as they were then. And I talked to someone, and then I started going to counselling every week, and we started working through it. And because the trauma is so long ago, it wasn't
It's not a quick process.
It's not a quick process, but it was about rebuilding me.
Yeah.
Because one of the things about PTSD is it affects different things in different people.
Yeah.
For me, it's trust.
Mm.
So I don't trust as easily as I used to, which makes it hard.
It does. And I didn't grow up in a military household, but I grew up with, my dad was a police officer while I was growing up. And he got to a point where he didn't trust anybody because people lied to him all day. And so he'd come home and was expecting everybody to lie to him.
Yep.
And so that's really difficult for the people who you're living with when you find it hard to trust.
Yeah, my husband and I split for a period of time whilst I was serving in 90, 91, around there. And that was a trust issue thing. There was a whole lot of stuff that happened. So I kept to myself a lot. I had very few friends. The friends I did make, I've still got today.
Yeah.
I might not be in contact with them as much, but I'm still...
They're still friends.
They're still friends,
and if you picked up the phone, you could just pick it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of them are the non-fair with, like they went through that time with me.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Like the tail end or whatever, but it was okay. And I suppose for my husband and myself, we just made ourselves, it made us, particularly after the separation, stronger. Because we only had one child when we separated. Yeah. And then when we renewed our vows, then I had the second son. So there's about 5 years between my sons. Yeah.
So with that, you joined the Air Force and then you met your husband.
Yep.
What was his reaction to dating someone and then proposing and marrying somebody who was in the Air Force?
A bit weird. Yeah. I've never asked him what his reaction would be. He just knew that if he wanted to meet me, he'd have to go to the gate and get a pass. Yeah. Or I'd have to meet him at the gate to get him a pass. Eventually I moved off base.
I mean, some people have to cope with having to come and meet the dad, but there's armed guards on those gates.
Yep.
And if you're late home, it's not that you get grounded. Like, there's some serious issues if you don't meet curfew.
Yeah, well, we didn't necessarily have curfew, but I moved off base, I suppose, 3 or 4 months after I met him. And that made things a lot easier. Yeah. But then I had to go to Butterworth for this exercise where I was backfilling for the people who went to Singapore for it or whatever. And we had no mobile phones.
Of course.
Right, in 1986. I'd go to the base post office, which had the international phones, and I'd ring him up. I had a time, and this is when I'm going to ring, make sure you're home, da-da-da. Yeah. And I'd ring and I'd talk to him, and I was there for 4 weeks. And in that 4 weeks, he asked me to marry him. And I went, nah, talk to me when we get home.
Yeah. Just so you know, this is not going to be our proposal story.
No. Anyway, I got home, and then I was home for a couple of weeks, and then I had to go on another exercise. Again, it wasn't a post office then, it was just it was up at Rockhampton, it was a public phone, ring him up. Yeah. And I was talking with him, and he goes, I want to marry you. And I go, no. You talk to me when I get home. So I get home, and I said, listen, if you're going to ask me to marry you, I want you to ask my dad. So we had to get on the phone, ring my dad, ask for my hand, and Dad said, well, if you can control it better than I can, you're better than me.
I think you just let that one go.
Yeah, just,
Yeah.
So I got married in Sydney, didn't have my mum and dad.
I was going to ask whether or not...
I had my sister Gwen that I mentioned. She was in Canberra with her husband. So they came up. Gary gave me away. But my mum and dad went to Monkey Mia that year.
Oh.
Because they'd already booked it, and airfares to Sydney were exorbitant.
Yeah.
And my dad put it to me like, I can help you with the wedding, or I can fly there to be...
Yeah.
So I had the help with the wedding.
Yeah. So, and did you wear a wedding dress?
Yep.
Yeah. Because I know, obviously, a lot of men, they go in their uniforms. So...
No, I had a wedding dress.
Yeah.
I actually had a wedding dress with a veil, the whole bouquet, the whole 9 yards, because that's what a wedding was for me.
Yeah.
It wasn't with a military chaplain. It wasn't on a military base.
It was a wedding.
It was a wedding.
Yeah.
It's it was just one of those things.
Yeah.
Girls like to have their weddings.
Yeah, definitely.
It was pink, the wedding dress, but it was good.
Ah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So a little bit different. Or pink underskirt anyway. Yeah. So.
And then... So then you had your first child?
I had my first child in 87. And
So how was that, having a baby while being in the Air Force?
Different, very different. There became a time when you were not able to do anything. And this is how much they hadn't thought about women being pregnant in the Air Force. They didn't have a maternity uniform.
I was just about to ask, did they have a maternity uniform?
Nope.
So what did you wear?
Maternity clothes.
Okay, so you just went without a uniform?
Yep.
Fair enough.
I wasn't going to be on parade, so
Yeah.
and I was working shift work, so
I can come naked, or you can work out how to get me a maternity uniform, or I'll wear maternity clothes.
They just didn't think about it.
Yeah.
Right? And because up until that point...
Because what year was it when women had to leave the Air Force if they got married or had babies?
It was in the 70s, so...
So a good almost 20 years later.
Yeah.
And
So he was in 1987, so I'd say it would be about 7 to 8, 9 years later.
Oh, okay. Even so.
Yeah.
I guess I was going from 70 to 87 going, that's nearly 20 years. They should have done something by then.
Yeah, but they still should have thought about it.
Yeah. Because surely you weren't the first to have a baby.
No, I wasn't.
So they've thought about it and gone, yeah, look, probably not many will do it, so let's just ignore it.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Men were in the unit
Yeah.
to make the uniforms. And then, so all my health care was covered.
Yeah.
My hospital stay was covered, but as soon as the baby was born, I had to have private cover for him.
Okay. Yeah.
So my husband's private cover went from a single to a family.
Oh. Right.
And it's expensive when you're one parent and one child.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we wouldn't not have it.
Yeah.
And I took 3 months off. I had a bit of leave, so I had my 12 weeks. I started 6 weeks before, 6 weeks after, and then I had some leave.
Mm-hmm. And that was easy enough? There was not much pushback around that?
No. The pushback came about when I wanted to breastfeed.
Ah. Yeah, how did that go?
Well, see, I was expressing at work.
Yeah.
And some of the girls who'd never had kids were still early. Well,
Yeah.
they were only 3 or 4 years younger than me, but,
Yeah.
why does she get to have odd hours to go for her breaks?
Because otherwise her boobs are going to explode. and
then,
there's going to be milk everywhere, and it could actually be squirted right at you.
I felt like saying that. I wish I had. But anyway, they made the complaint to a senior NCO.
Oh my goodness.
To a male, no less.
I'm sorry. I guess I was expecting that you may have had pushback from men, but to have the women put the complaint in.
To a male, who then had to come to me and say, Helen, listen, can you try and work out your expressing around the breaks times? I said, no.
No, it doesn't work like that, love.
It doesn't work like that. You know you're with your wife. It doesn't work like that.
I'll just switch them off and switch them back on again when I need to pump, shall I?
Although the funny thing is it was a night shift and I had it in bottles.
Yeah.
And they ran out of milk and they didn't go over, because it was raining, they didn't go over to the kitchen to get more milk.
Oh.
And one of the guys went, gee, this milk feels funny. I said, which bottle did you use? So there was that sort of funny side of things.
Yeah.
But the whole thing about the girls pushing back, that was like, and so at 4 months, my son went on to formula.
Yeah.
I'd been back at work for a month and
they made it too hard.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
And I know that's, 1987, times have changed, but women should be supporting women.
Yeah. It was almost like dog eat dog,
Yeah.
Because, I don't know why. It's always bugged me that they did that.
Yeah.
So when I had my second son, again in the Air Force, no maternity uniform, 5
years later.
5 years later, they thought about it the year after. They put one out the year after. I had him. I was off for 4 months, came back. I was in a different unit. It wasn't such a problem, but I wasn't going to go through it again.
Yeah.
So the last month before I went back, I swapped him over to formula.
Yeah.
So, and there's a lot of things involved with taking a breastfed baby and putting them onto formula. You've got to find a formula they like.
Yeah. And that agrees with their system.
Yep. And doesn't cause any allergies.
Yeah.
And then you've got to convince your husband, who's been quite happy with the nappies until that point.
Oh yeah. Formula nappies are disgusting.
Yep, to change the nappies.
Yeah.
Because what would happen is that I would get up, I'd go to work, my husband would take my son to daycare.
Yeah.
Or sons to daycare. Then he'd finish work, he'd come home, he'd
have the kids, yeah.
He'd have the kids and then I'd come home.
Yeah.
When I was working 2 nights, 2 days, during the day, we'd go through that process.
Yeah.
So I had a lovely family daycare person who lived next door to me. I'd take my son round, drop him off, all that kind of thing. And night shift, the husband had to deal with it.
Yeah.
So it was very much about.
So I'm just thinking that, 1987 and 5 years later, what's that, 92? Yeah, I can do the maths honest, I promise. Your husband was following you and your career.
Yep.
What was that like?
It was
because that's quite progressive.
It is quite progressive. And he had a trade. He was a carpenter.
Mm-hmm.
And he would always find work.
Yeah.
We'd always try to line up work before we got to a place.
Yeah.
Sometimes it didn't work out that way, which meant he just had time with the kids, or 1 or 2 at the time, and then move on. Sale, when I was at Sale, that was the worst for him because he couldn't get work for a while. But it was also the funniest because he was stay-at-home dad to 2 kids. So he got to take the eldest to school and he took the youngest to playgroup with all the other mums.
Yeah.
And all the dads who were serving got upset at their wives that there was this bloke with a beard and a motorcycle sidecar turning up at their their playgroup.
Yeah.
Well, he's a dad.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Well, he's a dad.
Yeah. Which part of it are you not understanding?
And of course I had to tamp down what are you doing with those women? Because I would get...
Yeah.
Because this is after the trust thing.
Yeah.
So it was like, breathe, it's okay. It's just playgroup. It's just playgroup.
Yeah. And those mums are knackered.
Yeah.
They're not interested in anything else.
So, he had his... We used to call it the harem at home.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's those sort of things.
Yeah.
When I went to... And usually, like when we went to Darwin, he put his hand to anything.
Yeah.
Like he's worked in a servo, he's worked in a warehouse, he's worked in retail, he's, whatever.
Yeah.
He's put his hand to whatever, plus his trade, to do what he needs to do.
Yeah, to support you and to be there and...
Yep.
Yeah.
And to be my partner. And it is a partnership.
Yeah. And how was that for you, going back to 1987 and even thinking about now, the kind of the societal ideas around who should be looking after children and who should be raising children. How did you cope with your husband being the stay-at-home dad and you being the person who was leaving the kids?
That was different. The leaving part wasn't so hard because that's what I did anyway.
Yeah.
The hard part was the other job I did at home.
Yeah.
Right? So you're a mum, you're a wife, you go home, you do the housework, you do the cooking, you do whatever.
Yeah.
So when my husband Tony was a stay-at-home dad, I had to actually stop trying to fix things when I got home.
Yeah.
So if he didn't do it the way I did, I had to go, no, that's his way, I can't.
Yeah.
Because he was keeping the house how he kept the house.
Yeah.
He was never taught how to be a housekeeper, but he would wash the floors. He would look after the kids. He would try to get Bill to eat vegetables and have it thrown at him. He'd put up with Bill trying to cook potatoes in the griller. Because he saw Dad put things in the griller, so I'll put potatoes in the griller. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah, it's all good till the flames start coming out.
Until you start smelling roast potato and you can't understand why.
Am I having a stroke?
No. He'd get the kids ready for bed.
Yeah.
But then we'd always said when we had even our first one, Chris, the kids are part of the family. We don't revolve around them. So, which sort of upset my mother-in-law because her idea was you revolve around your kids. And I'm going, no, they revolve around us. Or they're part of
it, yeah.
So it meant that we had to be cohesive.
Yeah.
The kids tried to play us off against each other. Well, that didn't work.
Yeah.
And they knew if they were in trouble, you don't go squealing to mum because mum would just send you back to dad.
Yeah, that's it.
It's
It's just got to be on the same page.
Yeah, and it was having him look after that meant that I could be, or him looking after the home front meant that I could do my job.
Yeah.
In the Air Force. I didn't really have to worry.
It also meant that when you were home, you got to be mum.
Yeah.
And not have to...
read stories, play with Lego.
And play and have fun.
Yeah.
Just, I can't think anything worse than playing with Lego personally, but...
Oh, listen, I've got a half-built Lego typewriter at home waiting for me to finish it off.
I can't think of anything worse. Were there ever any times where being a mum was a disadvantage when you were in the Air Force?
Yep. A couple of times, well, one in particular, there was a period of time when there was a peacekeeping course going to Cambodia. I was in Melbourne at the time. Would have been about 1990, 91. And I wanted to put my name down. I wanted to submit my name. And one of the sergeants I had at the time basically looked at my application and said, no, I'm not going to be putting this in because you're a mum. And I'm like...
Yeah, that's not your call to make.
It's not your call. But I let it go.
Yeah.
I wasn't... you have to pick your battles.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's something that's different now, is that mums are no different now.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
Okay? So, and like I'm talking 90.
Yeah.
Early 90s.
Yeah.
It's still only like 10 years from being fully amalgamated in,
Yeah.
So...
we have to give them a little bit of leeway.
Yeah. Yeah. But the disadvantage, I'd have to say, is the other way around. Because if the school rang and my son was sick, I couldn't just take off.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would have to check that I was able to leave. And sometimes I couldn't. It meant that Tony had to do more of the school pickups.
Yeah.
Go to the school carnivals. Go to the,
Yeah.
all that sort of thing. I would do lots of the stuff at home, like homework and that sort of thing. But
he was there for the moments.
Yeah.
Mm.
So when I got out and my youngest was still in early primary school, it meant that I could take.
Yeah.
And when he was in high school, I got to do canteen for the first time ever.
Yeah. You're like, this is what I was missing out on.
Yeah, basically. I did it for a term.
Yeah.
And, I was able to be there for them. And I was able to do things like when my youngest was doing his TAE or TEE or whatever they call it now, I was able to take that 3 months off.
Yeah, to be there to support him.
So we distressed the house.
Yeah, nice.
So he had no stress. He just did what he had to do.
Yeah.
Wasn't on his back about studying because that's not how it works with a person like him.
Yeah. I don't think that actually helps anybody.
No.
So
No, but it was just nice to be able to take that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I suppose now being a grandparent, it's nice that I can take that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
If my granddaughter needs me to go and be at a carnival,
yeah,
if I'm given enough time,
you can be there.
I can be there.
Yeah.
If they need me urgently, they can give a call and I can be there.
Yeah.
Which was something I wasn't able to do while I was in.
Yeah. So I still have so many questions and I'm aware that we're running out of time, which is really unfortunate. What would you say to girls who are thinking about joining the Air Force?
That you really have to be prepared to be one of the boys or part of a team.
Those two are very different.
Yeah, in some ways. But I suppose I'm looking at it coming back to that camaraderie
Yeah.
thing. That, to me, being one of the boys is being able to be accepted.
Yeah.
I suppose that's what I would say.
Yeah.
That you're being accepted and that you can do what you need to do. Understand that it is a tough life, that you are on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. And if you do get sick, you have to go to medical parade before you can get sick leave. And your boss has to then okay it that you can go on leave.
Yeah.
Only once did I ever have it rejected for a cold.
Oh.
Or flu or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, you're not sick enough.
I think I'm dying.
Yeah, I wouldn't have gone to medical parade if it wasn't for
Yeah.
That that it is. You are expected to dig a trench. You are expected to dig in, and the ads that they have on now show that.
Yeah.
You've got to be, but you've also got to think about what you want out of life. Is if you think that you're going to meet your Prince Charming in the military, might not happen. If you want to have a family, or you are a single mum and wanting to go in, understand that you're going to have those backups in place.
Yeah.
If you're deployed. If you do find your Prince Charming, again, you're both serving, you've got to have those backups in place. Because without that, you can't do the job.
Yeah.
If you're worrying about outside stuff, you can't do the job. And you've got to be able to do the fitness, lug those packs wherever you need to do, and just get on and do the job.
So with that being said, what were your highlights? What made it amazing? What made you stick in it for 16 years, was it?
Yep. The odd times I got to go on the planes. Really?
Yeah.
I remember going on a particular special flight. It was a 15-hour flight, and I saw some amazing things going from Sri Lanka all the way through almost up to the China Sea, South China Sea. saw some interesting things, saw some not so interesting things, but being able to go on that flight was special.
Yeah.
Getting on a Hercules and being drowned out by noise, not so much. Showing my kids that there's more than just one city.
Because, of course, your kids would have gone everywhere with you as well.
Yeah.
I'm sort of thinking about your husband following you around, but I didn't even think about the fact that your kids would have had different schools and...
different schooling systems.
Yeah.
All those problems, yep.
And even, like, WA has a starting age to some of the other states.
Used to.
Yeah.
Doesn't anymore, but it used to.
But it would have done when your kids were...
Oh, yeah. So I have my eldest... They tried to put him in his year group, but he wasn't at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's problems, yeah. But just showing, taking my kids away.
Yeah.
Being able to show them different parts of Australia. Having my husband there.
Yeah.
And I suppose the friends that I made, the friends that I hardly pick up the phone to now, that I can pick up the phone. The ones that are...
They're there.
They're there.
Yeah.
Those non-fair weather friends.
Yeah.
And the fact that I can go into an RSL sub-branch meeting and I can sit down and I can listen to the blokes be the blokes and think, yep, I'm a lone woman here.
Yeah.
We do have women in the meeting.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. A lot of that stuff that they call sexist or inappropriate or whatever now, I just think is, well, that's what I want. That's what I had.
Yeah.
And like water off a duck's back, it rolls off.
So with the RSL, how important do you think it is that people, for people who have perhaps left whichever kind of service it is, how important do you think it is that we have RSLs available? Very
important.
So tell me why.
People may not want to go immediately after they leave, but there comes a time in your post-service life where you miss the camaraderie, where you miss going down the boozer and just having a drink and having a yarn, telling war stories, being able to be yourself. I also work for an organisation called Working Spirit now, which finds veterans employment. And and we work very closely with RSL WA's Vet Jobs unit. So one way or another, we help them get work.
Yeah.
But one thing you miss when you get out is that no civilian job allows you to have what you had in the military.
Yeah.
That knowing someone's got your back.
Yeah.
That you don't have to tin plate your ass. That you don't, well, you do in the military, but...
In a different kind of way.
In a different kind of way.
Yeah.
That you're a unit that's doing something which is defending Australia.
Yeah.
I joined the Air Force. I love the Air Force. I love flying. I love planes. But I also joined because I wanted to do something for my country, serve my country. And there is nowhere else where people understand that except at an RSL.
Yeah. And like I said, I don't have the experience with the armed forces outside of the work that I do kind of with the health service. I do spend a fair amount of time with men who have served, and for them it's being in a room with somebody who has shared experiences.
Yep.
Because there's such limited opportunity to know that, and so many of them have experienced PTSD.
Yep.
But to know that you're not the only person that's sitting in the room that's got PTSD.
And to know that like some of my friends at North Beach, they've had it. They've tried to self-medicate.
Yeah.
They've become alcoholics. They've got through it.
Yeah.
And they're like, are you hanging in there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hanging in there. Oh, good. Don't forget, call if you need help.
Yeah.
You know, it's...
And some of them are the most gruff blokes going, but they'd be the first person to be there if you needed the help.
And to know that they've got your back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not only as individuals in your sub-branch, but the RSL has people's backs.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many facets to the RSL that can help veterans. And it's more than just a commemorative body. They can help you with financial counselling. They can help you with finding a job, as I said, with vet jobs.
I'm going to be honest, I thought it was just about the discounted beer.
No.
You mean there's more to it than just discounted beer?
There's the whole thing about making sure that our veterans do stuff. Yeah. And I'll be honest, it took me a long time to get to the RSL.
Yeah.
It took me a good 10 years to get to the RSL.
Yeah.
But in having said that, I wondered why I waited.
Yeah. And so 2 things from that. One, you talk about telling stories.
Yep.
How important do you think that is?
Very important. I think that we all have a story.
Yeah.
And the only way we know that someone else has a shared experience or understands where we're coming from is if we hear their story. So even though, like when I first joined and I was trying to find out if I could get any help about how to get recognition by DVA about my PTSD, which I don't, but the white card helps, they were like you when I told my story.
Yeah.
How could they?
Yeah.
And, you know, they understood
yeah.
that there's 2 sets of law. You know, you've got civilian law and you've got military law, and never the twain shall meet.
Yeah.
You know? So telling the story is part of the healing.
Yeah.
Part of being able to laugh at it. To if you can confront it and tell a story like I did. Like I didn't get into the nitty-gritty. I just said that something happened.
Yeah.
Well, so what? Something happened over in Afghanistan and it screwed up with my head.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to say why, but telling the story helps.
Yeah.
And knowing that in telling the story and hearing stories, you're not alone.
Yeah. I definitely agree. And that's, you know, we kind of have a catchphrase that for this particular podcast that my story makes a difference for that exact reason. Because when people hear it, they know that they're not alone, and it decreases that sense of isolation, and also somebody else has made it through. So if they can get through it, maybe I can as well.
And I think it, like I saw the podcast that you did the other day about the lady who went into a field that wasn't. You know, if you see one, you can be one. I think in our perspective, being ex-service people, veterans, knowing that you can survive it, and knowing that you have support, but you've got to know about the support, and that's part of the problem. Is that not a lot of people know that there's support.
So you spoke about the RSLs, and then you spoke about Working Spirit as well. Are there other support places? So there was Soldiering On. Is that
there's still Soldier On? There's still Soldier On. There's Buddy Up. They do activities. Sailing On is another one where you get to learn how to sail a sailing yacht. Cool. And there's also other, like Open Arms and a few other places. I know that on Working Spirit's website, there is a list of different places. Oh, awesome. And different support organisations. Yeah. And our newsletter that we send out once a week has places like Buddy Up and Connected By is another one where you can go and build a surfboard. So there's lots of different things. There's our Veterans Forge, so you can actually learn to be blacksmithing. Ah, okay. That sounds really cool. Yeah. So there's lots of things that people can do. Yeah. That can help with that camaraderie thing. And I think the other thing too is when you discharge, you don't know what you can do. No. And part of the reason I work at Working Spirit is to help people because I never had it. Yeah, and that's probably one of the other questions that I had as well is around that, I don't know if reintegration is the right word, but
when you've been part of the Air Force for 16 years and that's been your only adult kind of job, you've gone from school pretty much into, you had the 2 years, but, how do you do that? How do you redefine yourself?
Very hard. I remember going, whilst I was in, I had to go in and redefine myself as a mother.
Yeah.
And I had to make a break. So when I'd leave work, I had to have enough time to change myself into being mum.
Yeah.
And we used to say to the boys, once mum's out of uniform, it's fine. It's okay. But when she's in uniform, don't bugger.
Yeah.
Then when I left, I felt like I was in quicksand. I didn't know whether my skills would integrate or be useful outside. I had a set of skills, but how do I define them? And this is all stuff that...
And how do I create a resume when I'm not allowed to talk about a whole heap of things that I've done?
Very much so.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that Working Spirit does now. We take that stuff they give us and we help them with the resume or reverse market them to an employer to say these are the skills they have. Because it's more about our leadership, our collaboration, team building, analytical thinking, critical thinking, all that kind of stuff. And one of my bosses when I was in TAFE used to say, how can you say that you've gone from A to B quickly? How can you do that? And I said, that's because what I was taught to do. And she would discount what I had to say because I could go from A to Z and discount everything B to Y in between.
Because I can already see that they're not going to work. So we're going here.
And that was like, no, I need your reasons.
It'll be a lot quicker if you just trust me.
So there's that sort of thing. It's been, it's really hard. And you lose something. You lose something of yourself. Like when I started work at Working Spirit, I used to have quite long hair, as long as yours, I suppose. And I got it all cut off. And once I had it cut off, I went, gee, I feel like myself again. Because all through my service, I had short hair.
And do you think you grew your hair as like a rebellion?
It's just like I gave up running and being fit and as a rebellion,
That's probably not a good rebellion.
Wasn't. I can definitely say that.
And then could possibly be a controversial question, and feel free not to answer it. Do you have any thoughts on the fact that we haven't celebrated ANZAC Day for the last 2 years and then this year it's looking like it's going to be capped at 500?
I understand the reasoning. For the last 2 years I've done a driveway.
Which was actually quite beautiful.
And ANZAC Day for me has always been a personal thing. I suppose it's because I never started going to Dawn's... Well, I went to Dawn services while I was in. But once I got out, I never went. I think that it's understandable why it's capped at 500, but I can also understand the RSL's reticence of wanting to be a super spreader.
Yeah, most definitely.
Because I know, that they're struggling with it too. Yes, we'll get our march, but it won't be the same.
Yeah, that's it.
I'll march, which I haven't been able to do for 2 years. Damn COVID. But again, the streets are not going to be like they were.
And if you limit it to 500, is there actually going to be any space for anybody to be there? Or does the 500 just count the 500 who are marching?
No, that's everybody else.
Okay, phew, that's something at least.
So, but then again, how many of them are going to march? Because all the older ones may decide not to march because they don't
want to risk it.
And that's a conversation that's a daily conversation. And I think that living with COVID is about, it's a moral obligation. I think that's one way of looking at it.
Yeah.
You're not wanting to put people at risk.
Yeah.
So that might be a bit controversial, but I've studied philosophy and I've studied a few other things, It's just, that's the way I see it.
Yeah.
And again, it's the good of the many outweighs the good of the one.
Yeah.
Good old Spock.
Yeah. And I didn't ask you this before we started recording, so it's okay if you don't know the answer and I'll just delete this bit. But have you thought about what ANZAC Day actually means to you?
Yeah. It actually means sort of like it's a time for me to reflect on my own service. It's a time to reflect on people I know who have lost their lives in service, who were like my grandfather, who went to war and then came back not quite right.
Yeah.
Or 100%, because that's what happens with every serviceman.
I was going to say, I think actually, I don't know anybody goes to war and comes back, whether they come back whole or whether they come back the same person that went.
Yeah, that doesn't happen. It gives me time to reflect. When I say reflect on my service, kids don't necessarily look at it nowadays, but there was a poem that we used to sing as a song when I was a kid and had ANZAC Day. And it's I love a sunburnt country, a land of sweeping plains. Yeah. And my love for this country is why I served.
Yeah.
So ANZAC Day is about remembering why I served, my service, and why others serve. And even those who were on NASHOs or were conscripted or whatever else during Vietnam, they'll say the same thing. Eventually it was about, I did my bit.
Yeah.
So admittedly it's about remembering the guys that started off, remembering the guys who fell at Gallipoli.
Yeah.
But I think it's more than that now.
Yeah.
I think it's about us as a nation and our New Zealand partners as a nation. Because for our little country, we've lost a lot of souls.
Yeah, definitely.
Through that sort of thing. And I think it's something that we can acknowledge. Yeah.
And like I say, I think that we lost a lot of souls and I think a lot of souls have been damaged.
Yeah. And I think that needs to be recognised. And that even for a peacetime veteran, you leave not whole.
And because I have gone way over time, I'm really sorry, but
That's
thank you
all right.
very much. Have you got any other thoughts or anything else that you would like to add or share?
No, not really. I just think thank you for the opportunity. You had a world first.
Yeah, I'm appreciative.
Because I haven't really said that outside of my own personal circle, what I said earlier. And thank you very much. And
I really appreciate that you've given up your time to go on very short notice, so thank you very much for that. I also appreciate that you did feel safe enough to share your experiences, and that, regardless of some of the experiences that you did have, you still, from the sounds of it, you still look back on your time in the Air Force with fondness, and you still have
I miss it. I miss it every day.
And clearly still very passionate about planes.
Oh, yeah.
Have you learned to fly?
I did learn to fly. When I was 16, I started taking up flying.
Yeah.
Before I left to join the Air Force, I had my restricted pilot's licence, and then joining, getting married, having children, flying's expensive.
Yes, it is.
But
it's probably one of the most expensive hobbies I can think of.
But on the upside, when I'm in a commercial flight, I can tell when the plane's going to take off and I can tell when it lands.
Can you, if something happens and they put a call out, do you reckon you could land the plane?
Oh, yeah. It's just like, I reckon I'd have a good go at it.
Yeah.
But it'd have to be something really bad for that to happen.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining me for today's episode of A Hidden World of Women, a podcast brought to you by Women's Health and Wellbeing Services. For more information on the services we offer, head to whws.org.au or Women's Health and Wellbeing Services on YouTube and social media. Looking forward to the next episode where we uncover the hidden world of women.